It's like school. I love that. It's a natural silence that just comes over the whare today. Hei timata I tā tātou hui mo te rangi nei. To start our meeting today, kia kara kia tahi ai tātou. For those of us who want to, let's engage in our opening prayer. Kia inoi tātou. Tuia I runga, tuia I raro, tuia I roto, tuia I waho, tuia ngā kaimahi o te kaunihira o Kirikiriroa, whaia te iti kahurangi, kia mau, kia ita, haumie, huie, tae ki e. Tēnā tātou katoa I runga I te marama o Tangaroa, ko te marama o Tangaroa, e tohu atu ana ki a tātou he wā tēnei ki te tutuki I ngā mahi huhua kei mua I te aroaro. So welcome to everybody here today in the chambers and to everyone that is watching. The moon of the Manawataka lunar calendar for Te Ao Māori, the Māori world, is Tangaroa. Can anyone tell me who Tangaroa is the god of? Gold stars going out to you guys. Now, Tangaroa indicates that this is a good time to do everything that you need to do. It's a productive, high energy and positive. It's my favourite moon. Good to get out in the gardens too. Hoia no tātou, I'm going to be asking that our elected members bear with us today because we are trialling something that we haven't in our other hui, and that is the split of our meeting to have public excluded taken halfway through our meeting today, and that's something we haven't done before. So for our public that are watching, if you are a regular repeat offender and coming back and watching, Mrs. Glenn, kia ora whai, Glenn. Just know that we will be breaking at 11 o'clock to go into public excluded and then returning again at 1 o'clock. So there will be a 2-hour break which will allow us as elected members to discuss the public excluded agenda. Now, it is the intention, if we can, to get through our first part of the meeting swiftly, but if there are any other items that we need to continue to discuss after 1 o'clock, we will do that. So there is time for us to do that. What I'd also like to acknowledge is that, and it has been acknowledged before by our Mayor Tim McIndoe, is that we have a 50% pretty much new council. So what I'd like to endeavour to do, and I know that the majority of us want this, is to be able to take everybody together and to ensure that everyone is up to speed where we need to be when making important decisions. I had that experience myself coming in the 3rd year of the last term and having to catch up on a whole barrage of things, much like Mayor Tim. So I appreciate that is not an easy feat. So e mihi ana, I thank you all for your patience and your diligence in this area. So we will go straight to our agenda for today. Before I get into, I will take apologies first, and then before we get to the confirmation of the agenda, there could be a potential swap in items. Are there any apologies? Everybody's here.
Chair, I just want to signal, I think we're supposed to finish at 2, aren't we? That's the plan. There's a 2 o'clock meeting that I need to be and Tim needs to be at in the CBD, which we can't avoid probably. So just in case we run a little bit over, I'll have to disappear at that point.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, it's council.
Any others? Can I have someone to move the apologies? Kia ora, Emma. It's the hand game, right? Who puts it up the fastest? Emma, and seconded by Deputy Mayor Jeff Taylor. All in favour? Aye. No abstains. Get sore backside on the fence. Ka pai. Haere tonu. Confirmation of agenda. There was a request from Councillor Bidder to ask if items 6 and 8 could be swapped around. Is that a desire still of yours?
Yes, it is, because the economic information in item 8 might influence what we decide in item 6.
Kia ora. Kia ora, Councillor Bidder. It is my intention going forward that as a natural progression from the Chair's report to the General Manager's report, that we keep that, but for this meeting, after discussion with my General Manager, we're happy to do that. Okay. Do I need a mover and a seconder for that? Councillor Bidder to move. Do I have a seconder for the change of, and Councillor Leo to second? All in favour? Any not? That's moved. Ka pai. So just note that now item 6 will be swapped with item 8. That's right. So 8 will come before 6. Not in the normal numerical situation, but in this respect, yes. Okay, moving on to declarations of interest. Any declarations of interest? Kareko, nothing? Excellent. No vote required there. We have public forum, and I see that our submitter is here. The information is diligent. If you have not had a chance to read that, the information was put in there at 8 o'clock this morning, and I'd like to welcome Peter Boss, who's very familiar to this whare, to come and share your kōrero. And I don't need to explain to you how it goes.
Good morning all. I'm speaking to item 7, the district plan report. Cities are always changing. Many planning rules are based on political assumptions and opinion. Once a city was like a boiled egg, a centre with walls, or later a green belt. Last century, Hamilton adopted the fried egg model with a strong centre strategy involving a business centre and residential areas surrounding it. Many cities are now based on a scrambled egg model, also called a low-cost or polycentric strategy. One of the reasons for moving to a low-cost model is that it allows better usage of infrastructure. As an example, only 50% or 2 lanes of Wairere Drive's 4 lanes are being used at peak AM and PM traffic. In a low-cost strategy or polycentric city, the traffic would be moving in both directions at peak hour, making use of all 4 lanes, halving the traffic congestion and using 100% of the road. Traffic movement is just one example. Allowing residential use to be mixed with retail and commercial at ground floor is another. Many cities around the world allow or permit this. The reports say most of all allow living on the ground floor. More residents create a buzz, even outside shopping hours. Well, in Ireland, they say simplifying the option to change a vacant commercial property to use as residential or other purposes would make it easier to bring buildings back to life. In Paris, there is a maximum flexibility in land use so that buildings get renovated, economic activity takes place to pay the taxes and to maintain a high level of services. Let me give you an example of the politics in 4 Dutch cities, or the planning politics in 4 Dutch cities. 3 of these cities, Delft, Varennes and West Rotterdam in South Holland, allow mixed use at ground level. Schiedam's planning rules list ground floor living and retail zone as non-compliant activity, as it is in Hamilton. But you can pay €1,000 to request an exemption to the rule. The opposite happens in the neighbouring city, Varennes, where the city council will subsidise changing vacant retail to residential. This is a political decision. The planner's job is to write the town planning rules to suit. Continue updating your planning rules is good planning. I plan to speak again to this committee in the future to add more details on what a low-cost strategy could look like. End. Thank you.
So there is time for questions. Any questions from the floor? Sarah?
Thank you. Good morning, Peter. Thanks for coming in. It's a really interesting presentation. In terms of allowing residential, the planning to date has talked about the Victoria kind of part of the central city, so from London Street onwards, becoming more residentially based. Right now, we still require active frontages on the bottom level. Would you be advocating that we look at allowing residential on any floor anywhere across the central city, or that it would be a sensible move to start with, say, where we're wanting to encourage more residential living opposed to in the entertainment kind of district?
It would be sensible to just do that one area, the living area.
Yeah.
And so as people travel through it, they see that it's different to, then you create it's not all sameness, or you're not competing with, it allows it to change. I think in the business centre, you'll get quite a lot of resistance. But it would be an area that would, to try to see what happens.
Cool. Thank you.
Moroney?
Well, thank you, Peter. Thank you for bringing some innovative thinking before the committee. I think that's really great for us to be having our ideas challenged and thought about. What I'd be interested in if you do come back before the committee on this is understanding the social impacts on those cities where they've gone to those measures, particularly the before and after.
Yes. Yes, no, that's fine. I have got nothing to add.
Good way. Thank you very much, Peter, and please continue to engage and set the standard for the public. Kia ora. Okay, moving to the Chair's report. Take it as read. I'll move it. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor. Any questions? Comments? Do I need to do? Oh, yep. Deputy Mayor Taylor. Yeah, go to debate. Yeah, yeah.
I look forward to serving as your deputy in what is undoubtedly the most exciting committee of this council, combining growth and economic development. It's just a powerhouse. So I look forward to serving under you. But seriously, we do have a huge work program across so many areas, and we're responding to new legislation every 5 minutes as well. So it is going to be a really challenging 3 years, but I look forward to working with you.
Kia ora, Deputy Chief Taylor.
Kia ora, Chair Maria. I just wanted to acknowledge your Chair's report, particularly, I guess, as Environment Ambassador, seeing the threads that you've put in there too, and the importance of acknowledging our dependency on the environment and how our economic activity relates to that. And I want to acknowledge that because it isn't often the centrepiece of economic development when we talk about it. So I acknowledge your contribution in that space, but also the value of Te Ao Māori worldview. And I think we see that immediately in your Chair's report, which would be expected, but just that valuing and my appreciation for it, and I'm sure it's shared. Kia ora.
Mr. McDonald?
I guess my comments, first of all, wanted to express appreciation for the emphasis in your report on an outcomes-based approach and on accountability and transparency. One thing that I'm keen to ensure as we operationalise the work program in this committee is that affordability is explicitly treated as an outcome in its own right, not just an assumed constraint. Funding and financing were also listed as core priorities, and that's an area I'm particularly interested in. So as we move throughout our time in this committee and the work program that's associated, I'll continue to welcome clarity on how different growth initiatives translate into debt, into operating costs and ultimately rates, so that when we make choices, they are deliberate, that they're intentional, and that we making informed choices about trade-offs rather than cumulative ones. I think that's what the public trust requires of us.
Councillor MacDonald. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chair Maria. I just want to say I'm really looking forward to seeing you and Deputy Mayor Jeff work together to lead this committee this term, and want to acknowledge your excellent report. Thank you for also acknowledging the events that have happened in recent weeks across the country, and there certainly is work to do between our various committees to be ensuring that as a city we are focusing really hard on resilience to ensure the safety of our residents as natural disasters and extreme weather become more commonplace. But yeah, your enthusiasm comes through this report, and I'm really looking forward to seeing where you lead the committee, both of you. So, kia ora.
Councillor Strange.
Congratulations on your role, and also to the Deputy Chair. I just wanted to acknowledge the significant opportunities we have ahead of us in the next 3 years in terms of economic growth, economic development. It's been well canvassed, the Golden Triangle, or also the Golden Diamond down to New Plymouth, but particularly our relationship with Auckland. I think it's important that we work hard to cultivate a strong relationship with Auckland in terms of council, in terms of businesses, because as I see it, the corridor between Hamilton and Auckland will basically fill in over the next 50 years. In terms of business, in terms of residential, in terms of other opportunities. So it's important that we're cognizant of that long-term view as we make our decisions for those who will come after us. And I look forward to us working constructively with our partners, government, iwi, and other councils, obviously Auckland, but also across to Tauranga and other councils as well, and those within our future-proof region. Thank you.
Mayor McInday.
Kia ora, Whaia Chair, if I may put it that way. I'd like to echo most of the comments of your deputy and mine. I'd better not echo his comment about this being the most important committee. As I put the committee structures in place and appointed all the committee chairs, I think you're all important. But it is worth noting that this is a blend of two previous committees, bringing the economic growth and the planning sort of aspects of our work together. I want to acknowledge Councillor Thompson, who led the Strategic Growth and District Plan Committee in the last term, for her work. I think that this is a logical new structure, but obviously everything needs to bed in. So I want to thank you for taking on the role. I have complete confidence in your ability to serve very well in this capacity, and acknowledge, as others have done, the huge enthusiasm and energy that you've already shown in it. For the benefit of those who are watching, I just note that in the second page of your report, you've outlined the key priorities. To be some people who won't have seen the report, and I won't read them all out, but just to note that it includes land use planning, the district plan, strategic infrastructure, housing, funding and financing. These are big topics, these are big challenges for us all, and given that we are the fastest growing city in the country, and we know that people are continuing to come here, albeit there may be some question marks over the rate, and I know that that's been raised. It's vitally important that we try to stay ahead of what is coming our way. We can't always do that, but I thank you for the work that you're leading, and hope that we will work very constructively as a council to get this space right, because it's so crucial to our development as a city that we do.
Councillor Pike.
Kia ora, and tautoko what others have said. Congratulations on your appointment. You've grown a lot since your by-election, and you've become someone who's really strong, you're intentional, and you always keep people at the heart of what you do, and I really respect that about you. And I look forward to the progress that you and Deputy Mayor will make together in this committee. I also want to thank you for noting the recent tragedies that happened around the Motu following the weather events in January. My heart goes out to all the families and friends who have lost their loved ones. I'm also thinking of the families that evacuated their homes and are clearing up properties and just facing that uncertainty about what the next steps are. I want to acknowledge the outstanding efforts of everyone that's worked day and night in response, civil defence, NEMA, first responders, FENS, SARS, police, volunteer groups, iwi, council staff, and the many Kiwis who have shown up for one another in different ways. There is so much unseen that goes into these moments, including the support that 20 of our HCC staff have provided through our GEEK and beyond, which supported the response and recovery phases. And I know how much these roles take a toll on everyone, so I thank you all for, or thank them all for their strength and compassion and care at that time. As a result of this and looking internally, I put forward a request for a workshop yesterday for risk resilience and civil defence, which was supported by many elected members around the table, so we can ensure that councillors new and returning are aware of the risks in Kirikiriroa, that we are preparing appropriately and growing our resilience, because as Councillor Thompson mentioned, we're facing increasing events, and we need to assure that we're prepared adequately. Ngā mihi nui.
I'll exercise my right of reply. E re tonu ana te aroha ki a rātou mā e noho ana ki raro i te kapua pauri. Rātou kua ngaro ki te pō, wai hoki ko ngā tāngata, kareka he kāinga, kareka he whenua, kareka he aha i tēnei ki wā. Kia piki te ora, kia piki te kaha ki a rātou. Want to acknowledge again in person, and so that the public can also know that we are thinking about them, because no doubt there are people that will be watching who may watch after that have connections to those that have experienced extreme loss in Mauao, specifically in the Te Tai Tokerau, Hauraki, Tauranga Moana, and Te Tai Rāwhiti. For Te Tai Rāwhiti in particular, Te Araroa, I was there during the Christmas holidays for the annual Pā Wars in Ngāti Porou, where thousands of people from that area converged to celebrate who they are and where they're from. We drove through Te Araroa, and then 2 weeks later, there's no more Te Araroa. So we've lost lives, and people have lost livelihoods and homes. And that's why it is important to ensure that we protect what we have, so that we can move forward and ensure that we have the tools that we need to encourage, innovate, develop economic opportunities, as well as manage the growth that we had. One of my fellow lovely councillors, Councillor Leo Liu, asked me, Councillor Maria, what are you going to do to make Hamilton rich again? And my response was, what are we going to do? There is no one solution that lies with one person. It is a team effort. And that is one of my main objectives in this role, is to go out to the community who have the ideas, who have the knowledge and the experience locally, nationally and abroad, and bring those back to the table to help us all to think of innovative solutions to kōkiri whakamua to move forward. So with that, all in favour of the Chair's report? Those not? Ka pai.
The motion is carried unanimously.
Excellent. Now moving to item number 8. I see the suave Greg Carstens down the back, ready to do his thing and talk about strategic issues. I think it was the swag how you're sitting in your chair.
So while Greg makes his way up, I think we're also going to be joined hopefully by Tiki.
Tiki Mossad.
And so Greg will talk to a couple of items. There's also within that report an update on just the various growth areas. We can just take questions on that part as well. So.
Awesome. And because this might be the first time that some of the public have seen you, can you let them know who you are and where you're from and your role as well? Thank you.
Good morning, elected members. So my name's Greg Carstens. I am the Unit Director of Commercial and Analytics, which includes those things, but it also includes infrastructure funding and financing, and development contributions and economic development. And so my paper today, you'll see in there in item 8, is strategic issues. So there's three topics in there. The first is about the growth approach. So the growth approach is a precursor to the long-term plan's strategic view on how it wants to grow the city. This is an elected member strategy, so there's development going on by staff. This will come to the council for development and for direction. So it's the council's strategy, just to allay any concerns that there's, it's being developed too fully in the background. The second piece is a Greenfield growth update, which is relatively straightforward. That's just a bit of an update on development and growth in our major Greenfield cells. And thirdly, Tiki Mossop is here somewhere, or she will be shortly, and she'll give you the economic update for the city, the country, and other observations. I'm happy to take questions. Those are three topics, but of course, strategic issues relating to growth could be many things, so happy to take questions.
We have Tiki. Come take a seat, Tiki. And as you're walking up, I want you to think about letting the people know where you're from, who you are, and your role, please.
I'll just let Tiki grab a breath. Greg referred to an upcoming workshop on growth approach and growth projections. That's going to be held on the 11th of March, and that is a fundamental sort of first step in the long-term plan process. So that'll be where all the great questions and interested topics around immigration projections, what it means for growth, what are the various scenarios and things that we are thinking about that will underpin the long-term plan. That's where that workshop will really dive into that.
Morena koutou. Thanks, Blair, for giving me a chance to catch my breath from running. My name is Tiki Mossop. I'm the Economics and Policy Program Manager here at Council. And what I do for you, I guess, is I bring sort of the hot economic topics. You'll see today in the report that there's kind of an overview of Hamilton. I also write these for public consumption, so anyone in our community can also access specific economic data for Hamilton. And we make sure that this information is online. There are dashboards, and any opportunity that comes up, we help to share that with our community as well.
So through the chair, I think, would we probably want to just take questions on the report, or would you like Tiki to give a brief synopsis on, which she can certainly do, on the state of the economy?
Let's take the letter first.
As I outlined in the report that came through, our economy has had a tough time. The last year, as many of you will be aware, has been really hard for our businesses, for people who have lost jobs. Our unemployment has increased significantly. It has increased recently on the back of more people looking for work. So there were a lot of people who weren't even looking before, and now they're looking, which, while it's a negative having higher unemployment, it does suggest that people have more optimism about getting a job. In Hamilton, we've continued to see business growth throughout the entire of 2025, which is really quite amazing when you look around at the number of businesses that have closed. But overall, we're getting more businesses in Hamilton. We have seen an increase in consumer spending. Unfortunately, as I outlined in the report, if you look at it relative to inflation, compared to our pre-COVID times, it's actually significantly lower, which is impacting on a lot of our businesses, especially the ones that have been struggling for the last few years. Our consenting is also down, though we feel like it's probably about the bottom based on the amount of consents that are now being lodged. A lot of that is to do with house prices. Interest rates have come down, but there's a lot of existing property on the market, and the house prices aren't really moving to create that kind of feasibility profit margin for development to occur. We expect this to be the case for the rest of this year and probably moving into early next year. Sorry, not a glowing outlook. We do expect 2026 to be better, but I think the real caveat on all of that, if you look at last year, 2025 was supposed to be a great year, and then President Trump and his tariffs came out and everyone got a little bit of a shock, and it really put a dampener on economic growth. So it's really like the current outlook is reasonable for 2026, but we are very much at the mercy of the global economy and what happens outside of New Zealand as well as what happens here. So I'll leave it there.
The floor for questions. Councillor Strange.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question is around inflation. So the December, basically in December, for the December quarter was 3.1% across New Zealand. OCR review on the 18th, obviously their sole mandate is to keep inflation within the 1 to 3%. What was inflation in our region in that time, if you know? And then secondly, what do you put that high inflation down to, as we all predict what Reserve Bank will do on the 18th?
So we don't have area-specific inflation in New Zealand. It's basically across the board.
Yeah.
This time around, when you looked at inflation, it wasn't one particular area. It was across multiple areas. So lots of places saw prices increase, lots of the different factors in the consumer price index, the basket that they check. Rents was one of the things that has gone up, but basically everything, most things within that basket saw some increase. So previously it was like local domestic inflation, and our international inflation had been helping to bring things down. International inflation has started to creep up a little bit, which means it's no longer masking that domestic inflation. In terms of the OCR, we will get that, as you said, on the 18th. There's a mix of expectations, whether it will go up, whether it will hold. The RBNZ has said in their last release that they intend to hold it, but we saw Australia increase theirs just the other day. So there's probably a 50-50 sitting in the market at the moment.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Tiki, for your reports. Very much looking forward to the growth workshop. My question is in relation to development contributions, and we've been down on our development contributions in the last financial year and to November 2025. And on the one hand, we heard a drop-in session that's largely driven by external factors and uncertainty, and then out in the community we hear developers saying that our DCs are too high. So the question is, what's your early thinking around that and the growth, our approach to growth, and with the impending movement from development contributions to development levies? Yeah.
I can feel Greg itching to answer this question, so I'll let him go.
Good question. There's a few parts to that question. So just in terms of revenue, DCs do reflect either floor area expansion or number of new dwellings. So it really is quite dependent on the economy, and it's dependent on feasibility. So can the developers, do they think that they can make the right level of profit? So in that respect, the dampened economy, certainly the shape of the DCs follows the economy fairly well. In terms of the dollar values, Council in the last maybe sort of 5 to 10 years, maybe more like 5 years at least, though, has made a concerted effort to try and ensure that those who benefit from the growth infrastructure pay for it. So that's the growth pays for growth, and so Council's DCs have steadily increased over the last 5 to 10 years. The question of whether that's lawful, are those DC charges lawful? So there was a big court case that Hamilton was shown that they were. So in that respect, it's more of a decision by the council as to actually to what extent they want to allow the general ratepayer to subsidise growth. And I think the consensus is the appetite for that's low, and the cost of infrastructure is very expensive, and it's been rising similar to the trajectory of the DCs. So you've got construction cost, cost of construction inputs, increased 30% over the space of 2 years, sort of post-COVID as an example. But in short, they just reflect the cost of providing new capacity for growth. In terms of developers saying of course, developers, as I would too, would say that, council levies are high, and understandably, because they're a lot of dollars. We've done economic research in the past, and DCs probably have less of an impact on investment decisions, partly because they only make up about 5% of a build cost, and partly because decisions like to invest in a significant development often don't hinge on the fees, and they can be passed on to the future purchaser. I hope that answers some of your questions. As compared to other major cities, Blair's saying. Other cities that grow like Hamilton, so Auckland, Tauranga, parts of Christchurch, they are comparable, and for example, Auckland are moving towards our approach that this council's been doing for several years, so I don't think there's any great discrepancy there. If you go to councils that don't grow as much, it's not really apples for apples, but they can be quite a lot lower.
Thank you. Thank you both for your reports and for your comments today. They were really informative. I think where I am interested is, given the information we have about consenting being down, about employment being down, about the economy being kind of soft in general, I'm interested in how that translates into our growth assumptions heading into LTP, whether we are looking to be cautious, whether we are looking to be optimistic, and what evidence underpins that approach. And the second question was, Tiki, you mentioned that there were indicators showing that 2026 might be better than 2025. Granted, there were indicators that 2025 were going to be good too, so I appreciate that it's a how long is a piece of string kind of question, but I'm interested in what are the indicators that make you think that. Thank you.
So the first part of your question, just around growth assumptions, and we will dig into that, or Greg will dig into that with you at the workshop. But generally, if you look at long-term growth, which is what the long-term plan's about, it has to take out that kind of up and down movement. And I think you'll see in there's a graph around consenting relative to population growth. And generally, it sits underneath. So we've actually got a shortage in there. And you have to plan for that gap, because that housing goes up and down, and you're looking at that kind of long run average. So that's a really important consideration, is not where are we right now, but what do we think is going to happen over the next 10 years? And Greg and the team will go through that in more detail to try and kind of unpick that further for you. The second part of your question, just around the indicators. So GDP is expected to be sort of 2 to 3% this year, which is below our long-term average. So we're not talking about skyrocketing growth and amazingness. We're talking about quite conservative growth, but 2 to 3%. Similarly, most of the bank economists and RBNZ are expecting house prices to grow, and that is a really key driver of confidence, and it's a key driver of people spending money in New Zealand. And that, again, is lower than the historical average, but sort of sitting in that sort of 3% margin. And we expect Hamilton generally does better than New Zealand, so we expect that similar or better outcomes for our city as well.
Just to add to that, I think Councillor Mesh can be offline, but Greg and Tiki and the team have extensive access to a wide range of information from a number of commentators, Infometrics, etc. So there's an enormous database of information they are constantly working with that underpins this information.
And if you've seen something ping up on your computers, I've just forwarded the Infometric information. But, kei te pai, Mia McIndoe.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Greg and Tiki, for your reports. Cautious optimism seems to be the common theme, both to the written reports and to your responses. And that's better than things have been in recent times, so let's hope that continues. Greg, could I just focus on your report in particular, the Greenfield Growth Update, beginning at paragraph 11, where you note that greenfield growth in Hamilton is progressing at a steady pace despite challenging economic conditions. And then you go on to note that building consents for new homes increased more strongly than expected in 2025, rising 6% compared with the previous year, while infill consents declined by 9%. And just taken in percentage terms, that could appear almost to be a sort of a negative. I'm wondering if you can perhaps put some numbers other than percentages around that to give us some context and perhaps comment on trends that you see, because we've all seen a huge development of infill housing in the city. Where are we heading with that? I know this is a very loose question. It might be better for the workshop, but I'd just be interested to get some context, because just based on the percentages, that doesn't suggest we're going in the right direction.
So the first part of the question about greenfield. So, as you know, there's quite substantial greenfield areas that are, or parts of greenfield areas that are being unlocked, or that the early stages are being developed. So Peacocks, there's quite a bit of latent demand, I'd suggest there. Developers are very smart about picking, when they start and when they start in the economic cycles, and we have seen some pickup there, and likewise in Rotokauri. So I think that there is some optimism there in the greenfield. It's probably Tiki, you might want to. The declined by 9% in the infill, because as compared to last year, but.
I think it's really important to think about how development happens in infill versus greenfield. So in greenfield, typically someone comes along, says, I want a house. They might buy a house and land package, or they might have a piece of land and it's a separate build. And normally there's a great deal of confidence about that, because the building company is able to, they know that they've got a buyer. Whereas at infill, you get more of the builds that, you might build 4 duplexes and then you're selling on the market. So there's quite a different way of interacting, I guess, with the market in these two spaces. You've got high levels of confidence, which means that they're more likely to go ahead, whereas the infill ones are more testing the feasibility. And so when house prices are not doing anything, or they're coming down, there's not that certainty that you'll be able to sell for the price that you need to make the profit that you need. So that's a dampener on infill, whereas greenfield is more about who wants to buy a house and who's there ready to buy one. We're talking about 900, give or take, 900 dwellings over the last year. So, and about 60, I think off the top of my head, 65% of that around is infill, and the other part is greenfield, which is it's skewed slightly more to greenfield than it was in the past. I think at one point we got up to 70% infill, 30% greenfield.
Thank you. Just a quick question following on from Councillor McDonald's line of questions. Actually, no. First of all, what's a growth approach document? You've got that in the report.
Thanks, Councillor O'Leary. It is it's the document that is to inform council's growth approach, to its growth assumptions to the LTP. What is it? I think we made that name up this year. So
I've not seen it before. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, it's because it was.
Okay.
It's not a plan or a strategy, and it's like it is an approach. So that's the main reason.
Yeah, no. My question was, I know we've got a workshop coming up to for elected members to look at growth assumptions. So I'd hate for us to for staff to have done the work without our input.
Can I just give you some confidence there? So some of the sort of hardcore academic population work is about the long-term population projections. So that's your high, medium, low.
Yep.
The growth approach is the elected members, direction and decisions effectively about, when, where to grow, and there's all sorts of things that come into that decision. So the growth approach document is not baked, and it should come to you in a useful form though, with guardrails around based on infrastructure.
Okay, that's really helpful. Thank you. And so, can we also have a look when you bring that information to us to previous growth assumption and over the several decades and how we've actually tracked? Because it's one thing, isn't it, to crystal ball gaze and plan on an assumption? And then my next question is, and also when are we going to get the information that I requested through induction about the strategic growth areas we've put in infrastructure and it's just sitting there without houses because it's being land banked?
So that will come with the growth approach.
It will?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I think of the growth approach as kind of everything relevant to the topic of growth, in terms of the various assumptions and levers will be part of that discussion. The name was, we tried 20 different names, but it's effectively let's have an all-in discussion on growth, because it's such a fundamental part of the long-term plan, and understand all the different levers that are available to council.
Councillor Liu.
Thank you, Chair. My question is around economic growth. We are the fast-growing city, but we are not the fast-growing economy. So my question is, what concrete steps is Council taking to make sure Hamilton is not just growing bigger, but be more productive and more attractive to investment like the Chair mentioned, from other sectors, from other regions, nationally and abroad, over the next 2 or 3 years, so we can do better than the country's average.
Thanks, Councillor. My quick answer would be, so productivity is fundamental to economic growth. I think if, as the council, you want to look at, well, what's your sphere of influence? I think the best answer to that is around providing efficient infrastructure. So providing capacity for growth, providing good transport networks, providing things that enable productivity. The ability of council to, in fact, make a business do its, produce its goods more efficiently, that's for them to do. So I think my view is that council should focus carefully on that infrastructure stuff in terms of productivity, because that's where it can make the most difference.
And in terms of attracting investment?
That's another choice around your economic development strategy. The council's strategy for economic development is underpinned by the businesses, Hamilton businesses, and enabling them to grow and growing our businesses. Attracting it's a debate, there's debate around this. It is a local authority's economic development function to attract, corporates from outside and bring them in. I think there's more of an enabling role, and we do that now. So that'd be the short answer, probably.
Thank you.
Mead.
Thank you, Councillor Hutter. Two-part question, if I can. On note 38 in the report, it says consenting to remain low to 2028, which is note 38. And then we talk about consents. How many of those consents are actually turning into build programs? Because I've noticed from other data and going back, in some cases 46% of consents aren't being built. So at the moment we're saying we're going to consent, but how many of those converting into builds? And percentages sort of are whatever, but what's that numbers? Because one house means one rates, 1% could mean, I don't know. For me, sorry.
So at the moment, we've got around 650 houses under construction. That number has been relatively stable. There's always a proportion of builds that are not quite started or are on hold. We have seen that number decline significantly since 2021. So in 2021, we had something like 600 that were not under construction, but that has decreased down to about 30% of all consents that are hanging out there. So you're probably in that 200 to 300 mark. But a lot of those, like the time from consenting happening, consent granted, to being undertaken can be quite long, depending on the size of the project. But it is lower than it has been in recent years.
Can I just add something quickly? Was the distinction between resource consents and building consents. So once a building consent is granted, there's a 90+, 95% completion rate. So we're really talking about from the granting of resource consent. And, you know, there is some pessimism around if, you know, resource consents don't turn into builds in the expected time. But on the other hand, you can bank, you know, you can pause your investment. You've got a 7-year period of a resource consent. So there's some, you know, you can temper the pessimism there to some extent. Yeah, that's all.
I might just through the chair, just invite Grant Kettle just down to the microphone over there. Grant's our planning guidance manager, so he manages the resource consents process. Grant can just quickly talk to the trend of resource consents, which are up quite substantially this year compared to last year. So just it speaks to your line of questioning, Councillor Mead.
Yeah, kia ora koutou. My name's Grant Kidd. I'm the Director of Planning Guidance. I'm from Kirikiriroa in Hamilton. Have been here for a number of years, many years, all my life, basically. In terms of the question, in terms of sort of those indicators of growth, I mean, from a consenting perspective, we're probably about 17% ahead of where we were this time last year in terms of resource consent applications. So that is probably month-on-month growth. We are seeing more resource consents coming in. Whether they then materialise into, as Greg and Tiki has sort of spoke about in terms of actual builds, that's still a little bit unknown. We are seeing a lot of what we call change of conditions, so where developers will be looking to amend their development proposals. We do still get a number of those applications come in, but I think what we're seeing for the last, well, certainly the first part of this year, is there is an increase in the number of resource consents that we are seeing. They're certainly not back to the levels that we were seeing in 2024 at the moment, but again, we are seeing an increase.
Just had if I can, clarification for the reports. Could we have that put in the consort reports as the difference between planning and the other two? Because for me, consenting is a whole lot of things. Now it's two things. Can we differentiate those in the report so I know where we are?
Typically in the report it's just building consents, but we could provide resource consent information. We do have quite a good little infographic that shows the process all the way through that we can put in next time.
Thank you.
On this, Councillor Casey Cox.
Thank you for all of the information. The tracking of how our forecasting has done for us in the past, like has it actually forecasted what we expected it to? Do you review your work?
Thanks, Councillor Casey Cox. We certainly do, because I'm just curious about it. It is interesting to look back and see. It's interesting. So in 2006, their projections were wildly optimistic, and then the GFC hit, so they look extremely wrong. I wasn't here then, by the way. But broadly speaking, you'd be surprised they're really quite. I mean, there's probably a bit of luck here, but they are really quite consistent with the projections over the last sort of 6 or 7 years. So the city's averaged about 1,200 houses, new houses a year for the last, except for the last year or two. But you know, going back the best part of the decade, and the projections have been about that, there or thereabouts. And so I would say they are really consistent, and it is good work, and it's also a bit of luck because you can't control economic cycles and developers. We'll give you the full picture of the growth projections. It's worth remembering that the growth projections are principally based around natural increase, or births and deaths and migration, which is quite different to the Tiki's, you know, very nuanced and all the complexities of the market. So quite accurate, I think.
Thank you.
Good question, Councillor Moroney.
Only the last question. Thank you. My question is around housing. In the report, you note that we have a 1.8% increase in rents in Hamilton, and in the report it describes that as being around the lack of housing supply. What I'm interested in understanding is how is that different from other cities? So is our housing supply markedly different from other cities because they are getting, their rental costs are going backwards, they're getting decreases and we're getting increases?
we don't have comparable, we don't have comparable numbers because nobody produces that information, unfortunately. But I think it's important to know because places that are going backwards, like namely Wellington, where you've seen a lot of people, lose jobs and leave the city. And following COVID, a lot of people decided they wanted lifestyle, they wanted space, because being locked up in your apartment for 2 months wasn't exactly fun for many of them. So we saw a big shift out of places like Wellington, and they are the areas that have really seen the rental declines, because there's just not people coming in. They've cut contractors as well. So a lot of people that would have been city-based have moved out. Whereas in Hamilton, we just haven't seen that. And we have, even though we've seen a decrease in jobs recently, actually our job growth was pretty consistent. Our population growth was consistent. Wellington's hasn't been, as an example. Auckland has similar issues because they have the population growth that creates additional demand for housing. Hamilton has for a long time had very low vacancy rates for residential and commercial industrial properties compared to other cities in New Zealand.
Just a follow-up question to that, because you've talked about that the economy in Hamilton is generally better than the rest of the country. What are the key factors in that?
Good question. We have quite a diverse economy, so we don't have a hard concentration in one area, which really helps. So when, for example, if there's government cuts or if there's a downturn in manufacturing drops, we actually have other sectors that hold up our economy for a bit longer. We have a really strong healthcare base, and demand for healthcare is not going away, it's getting stronger. So that also is one of the key underpinning aspects. I think in the presentation was a kind of a diagram of the distribution of how GDP is and our jobs, and that just shows it's a real colour wheel, and that really helps to support the economy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Seconder. Thank you, Councillor Bitter. Debate. Yeah, going once, going twice, gone. Councillor Kabwe, Councillor Bitter.
Thank you, Chair Maria. House consents have fallen to 51.7% of the peak in 2021 to 22. I'd just like to remind councillors that I started last term predicting a 50% fall over the term, so I was out by just 1.7%.
Not good enough.
Yeah. Apologies for that. Council spent most of that time projecting high levels of growth. Hamilton is still the fastest growing city. That's fantastic, but the rate of growth is slower. That affects what Hamilton City Council should do, and it also affects others who are planning fast-track growth sales, which are going to put pressure on our infrastructure spending. I would like them to take that into account in their decisions. Economic conditions can change quickly, while development bureaucracy takes years and sometimes decades. We need to be agile and responsive because HCC does not control overseas events or NZ's immigration settings, yet such things have a massive impact on our city and our people. I asked for this item to be brought forward so we can consider the latest information when discussing items 6 and 7 today, so we can encourage responsive changes. And it is good to know that we will be having a workshop in March so we can consider more details for the long-term plan. So thank you for that. I want to finish with an important point. Late last year, the Reserve Bank said that the biggest individual driver of inflation was council rate increases. Let's do our part to change that.
Councillor McDonald.
Thank you. And thinking about whether I would support the motion that will be put to us, I was thinking about what that means in terms of our context, in terms of our environment. So we're in a space where our economy is starting to stabilise. There are new tendrils of hope, but we also need to be clear about what the numbers are telling us, where consenting employment and confidence are still very low and uneven. So I will support the work that underpins the growth approach, because having that clear baseline will inform our activities going forward. But my support today is based on continuing to build understanding, not committing us to any preconceived particular growth rates, any pre-locked-in sequencing or infrastructure timing, and not assuming that the works that are underway are cost neutral just because they're in the budget. Our judgments need to stay tightly linked to affordability, rate impact, and to evolve as the data evolves. Thank you.
Corellis?
Thank you. Yeah, I think there's plenty of time to debate many of the issues that have been raised in the context of this report at the workshop. But I do want to make the point that notwithstanding that Hamilton's economic position might be better than other places in New Zealand, that the way in which I read the economic report attached to this staff report really emphasised the need for financial discipline, sharp procurement, efficient processes and prudent debt management, because the practical reality for many in our community is that wages are not high, everything else has gone up, and I'm very keen to see how our approach to growth reflects that practical reality for the people that we serve in Kirikiriroa.
Deputy Mayor?
Chair, yeah, look, I think some good points made about understanding our growth today, and I think for me it's about keeping an open mind going into the LTP. I agree, we need to pitch things right in terms of our growth assumptions and projected spending, but you definitely don't want to underestimate either. I remember my experience when first getting on council. We were in a situation where we were under a lot of pressure because we had grown faster than expected, and that was not a fun place to be either. So yeah, there's a balance there. I think I'm looking forward to the workshop, and I think the growth. My understanding of the growth approach document is that it's going to give us a better opportunity, I think, to steer where and how we grow than we've previously had as elected members. So I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, I'm keeping an open mind. Thank you.
Councillor Anakisa-Cox?
Yeah, I guess in terms of our economic indicators and growth, I'm pleased to know that we are often accurate in our projections. That's really good news. But in terms of our economic development, my concern is that sometimes we don't understand the nuances of the data. So GDP has been widely criticised in environmental circles because it tracks closely to emissions, right? So that's a conversation that I would like to have more of, because I think, yes, we need growth, yes, we need jobs, but we do need to start asking questions around what are we growing and what are the impacts of that amongst ourselves at least. And I'm not saying we're going to suddenly get all the answers to those conundrums that we might face, but I think it's not okay to not recognise them. So at least we should be starting there. And in terms of housing, what concerns me, I guess, is that we celebrate when house prices go up because we feel confident, but that's not good for our children. How are they ever going to get into the market with that reality? So where is central government in that instance? Why aren't they stepping up into the space that's been basically created for them to step into? We've got builders who need work when the market drops. Use it, do it, get busy in that space. So that would be my advocacy back to central government. It's not a time to slow down on social housing, it's a time to ramp it up when the market dips. So these are the things that I think we need to talk more about in this space. Thank you.
Kia ora. Councillor Mead?
Thank you, Councillor Maria. A couple of things from here is, I noticed from the report that the growth was in liquor and groceries, and manufacturing and those sorts of things that we do desperately need in our organisation are battling. And we need to look at the whole picture of what we need. And I back up what Anna's just said. The best thing I've seen since I've been on council is what's happened in Enderley, where we managed to put people into what I call affordable housing, because we keep talking about it, but nobody's putting a dollar figure on it. And if things are quiet at the moment, how can we get central government to help us put people into houses? And I think that's the one thing. Put someone in a house, put something in they own, and you'll change the whole face of a community. And that will bring to the manufacturing base employees. And it's tough when you hear a lot of manufacturers saying they can't afford to live in Hamilton anymore and we don't need that. So for me, I'm with where we're going. I'm looking forward to that workshop. Thank you.
Kia ora, Councillor Mead. Hei whakakapi, because I don't see, oh yeah, there's Councillor O'Leary, but I just want to acknowledge that recently we commemorated, depending on your perspective, our founding document, our constitution, Te Tiriti o Waitangi, and that was something that I didn't acknowledge at the start, so I just want to acknowledge that that's something that we all acknowledge as a country. And I must cite also on my part is that as a Māori ward councillor, it is alongside my fellow Māori ward councillor, Councillor Robbie Neha, it is our duty to ensure that He Paumanoa Ora, along with the rest of the councillors and our Mayor and Deputy Mayor, the strategy for our city, the Māori strategy, is kept at the forefront. And I do note that it's not in this report, and I'll take the hit for that one. But I want us to get out of the thinking that He Paumanoa Ora, that anything that's Māori related is about a blessing, it's about doing a karakia and singing a song and doing a couple of action songs. It's more than that. It's about history, investing and celebrating our stories that enable us to create a pathway forward. It's about unity, making sure that we're all on the same page, and absolutely everyone articulated their passion and desire for our community, which is something that will always resonate with me. Prosperity. Economics is all about prosperity, as is growth. And these are the pillars that sit under He Paumanoa Ora. And under that, it talks about our housing innovation framework as well. Restoration. How do we implement nature in the city? How do we ensure that those environmental concerns are kept at the forefront? So this is a plea to our different departments within council that when we are thinking about our reports, how does He Paumanoa Ora fit in? Because you can guarantee that it will always apply to whatever we do. Kia ora. Councillor O'Leary.
Thank you, and thank you. Apologies to my colleagues for missing debate, but I did come in on the end of Councillor Mead's one, and I just want to continue with that. Over the many LTPs, far beyond my term here, I don't really think council and the city has taken a cautious approach to growth. We have been romanced by you can't stop growth, and I guess you can't because if a city's not growing then it's stagnant or possibly worse. But looking over those previous LTPs, while I think we've probably got the population numbers right, I do question whether we've got our strategic infrastructure investment right. Hence my consistent questioning around how are we going with land banking, because we put in very expensive infrastructure in areas, and then those areas sit there without houses. The land sits there barren. And travelling around the city, as I know we all do, I do go through some of the growth cells that we've got at the moment, where we've put in particularly very expensive transport infrastructure. And yet years later, there are still no homes connected to that transport infrastructure, and the infrastructure is starting to look shabby. It is hard to get the balance right between how much do we grow and how fast, but it is in our hands as governors. I have always had an issue with growing on all fronts for the sake of it, and I do think it creates a bit of a hodgepodge, Hamilton, and I've said that term many times in this chamber. We need to, when we grow, we need to make sure that we can get in there with that growth cell and enable those houses however we do that, even if we incentivise those houses to be built so that people have homes. Because it's just not good looking at strategic, very expensive infrastructure sitting idly and not doing the job that it was put in to do.
Kia ora,
Thank you,
Councillor
Chair.
O'Leary. And the report has been moved by Councillor Thompson and seconded by Councillor Bitter. All in favour? Any not?
The motion is carried unanimously.
Thank you very much. Moving on to our next item, the General Manager's report. Thank you, Blair.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, councillors. I'll just briefly introduce my report. So, first of all, I just want to acknowledge the coming together from the last term, two committees into this committee, which is really focused on the intersect between all of the growth work and all the economic development work. The two are naturally aligned, and I'm delighted to see the Mayor Tim has brought them together in this committee. I want to first of all just acknowledge, before I get into what's in the work programme, the comments that have just been made in the previous item. It's fair to say we as staff are eminently aware of all the issues that you've just talked about. And I want to assure you that we are thinking about those all the time. This is a highly adaptive, evolving environment that we're working in. There is tremendous reform. I mean, the government has looked at this for many, many years, and successive governments have grappled with the very issues that this committee is and previous committees of council have grappled with. So we are well tuned into that. We are, I'd like to think, at the very forefront of some of that thinking across the country. And you have seen and you will see many of the staff who work in this space. We have incredibly talented staff who are at the top of their game, who are heavily connected with all the right players. So I want to assure you that we've got the best people with the best brains working on this with you. So we are not immune to what you're grappling with. We are trying to find innovative solutions, and I would like to give you assurance, I think we do have many innovative solutions that we have in play at the moment, and I could talk about those in detail if you wanted me to. So again, the program in front of you today is our and my advice to you as to the work program that's appropriate today. But I want to also assure you that the work program that you see in front of you may well change through the cycle of this committee. It may well change during this year. It may well change next year. Things such as fast track, things such as government reform and all the reform agenda, central government elections later this year, the state of the economy, we are monitoring those, and we will bring to you the most up-to-date information and advice as to how we best navigate that. I too want to make sure our long-term plan, which is another hat I wear, responds to the various things that you said, and the work of this committee is a key underpinning contributor to what the long-term plan looks like. So just again, want to provide you with that assurance. In my report, I've identified sort of 6 major areas of work program focus for our team. That's listed in paragraph 8. Happy to take any questions on that or anything else in the report. But again, I think at the end of the day, this work program is comprehensive. It reflects the fact that Hamilton as a metro city is a very, very big influential part of the New Zealand economy. You know, a population approaching 200,000 people, a metropolitan area that Hamilton has a massive role to play with over double that population, our location, our role in terms of the New Zealand economy, and our need to respond to what the government is also asking us to do through legislation are all parts of what makes up this work program. But equally, it's about finding that balance between the environment, things that Chair Maria has talked about. Not only today's community, but the future community who will choose to live and work or enjoy Hamilton City, that it remains to be a city with a healthy river, with great natural amenity, that it is also resilient, to Councillor Emma's earlier points in terms of where we plan and grow are in the right places, that we think about natural hazards, and that's all part of our planning. So again, just want to assure you this is a comprehensive work program, but it's also one that's agile and will respond to what's happening.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Thompson?
Thank you, Blair, and thanks very much for the overview of the work program. There's a lot in there. I was just interested in a particular issue that was raised late last term was the Infrastructure Commission's report around growth paying for growth, and it compared different cities and how much each of those cities were recovering in terms of the cost of growth infrastructure. And Hamilton sat fairly low in terms of their recovery percentage. I'm wondering if there's within the work program a chance to understand that better, why that's the case, and how much has it changed over the years? I
might invite our resident expert, Mr. Carstens, who was heavily involved with that, and in fact also for the the newer councillors also authored quite a comprehensive analysis of our own growth areas, in particular looking at some of the implications of fast track on growth. So Greg.
Yep. Thanks, Councillor. So you're talking about the extent to which growth pays for growth, and in that report, the table, and we were near the bottom. We were near the bottom with Tauranga and Auckland, and that's because the way they looked at it was going to make it less favourable for growth councils. Also, they factor in rates and OPEX into that calculation, which kind of skews it. I'm happy to do something, to do an analysis that you can look at. Growth paying for growth is a problem. That's what development levies are designed to do. And we do fare worse on that than non-growth councils, but partly a function of being a growth council.
I would also add, Councillor, that the topic of growth paid for growth will also be a key part of the financial strategy in the long-term plan. So the work that Gary is leading will also examine how that intersects with the work of development contributions, development levies, and of course our very commercial approach to the likes of Fast Track, which we will talk about more in PX and also in an upcoming briefing on the Fast Track, where we are taking a highly commercial approach to growth shall pay for growth.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, a little bit more detail around it would be helpful at some point. Thank you. The Enderley Fairfield Development Plan, it says it's currently on hold pending Kāinga Ora decision. So, yeah, where are you able to say kind of where that's at, or are we able to get an update maybe in a future report, and whether there's anything that council can do to support that development moving along, or are we simply just waiting for a Kāinga Ora?
Look, happy to give a more of an update on a future report, but two high-level comments. I think Councillor Anna's earlier comments, I mean, we are working closely with Kāinga Ora, but they've also gone through a very significant strategic refocusing of their program. So we will continue to advocate and work with them. What I would also, though, add is that through some work that we have done, there is a pathway for some consenting and some growth and development to occur in the Enderley area in terms of capacity, wastewater capacity issues being cleared for some growth. So there are some positive green shoots there, but happy to give a further update in the next report.
Cool. Thank you.
In terms of the amount of questions we've got, and we probably won't get time to get to debate, just in terms of how it's flowing at the moment. So we do need to break at 11:05 at the latest to move into public excluded and allow that time to change over. So thank you all for your patience, and if we can keep our questions moving. Councillor Moroney.
Thank you. I was also interested in the Kāinga Ora situation with Enderley Fairfield, but in conjunction with that, is there any update or any work undergoing around the Flagstaff development that was cancelled by Kāinga Ora?
So that is a matter between Kāinga Ora and Waikato Tainui under the offerback provisions of the land. So from our perspective, that land has a consent, an active consent on it. So that's just between those two parties.
Okay. Do we have anything on our work program aligned with that?
No, we don't need to.
And finally, from me, I see that on hold also is the Central City Master Planning. Can you just give us a bit more details about why that's on hold?
Well, I think until Councillor Jeff's subcommittee has had some discussions and meetings, we don't want to go and do any more work. I think there's enough plans in the Central City already. I think our focus is more around implementation. There may be some work that we do to support the work of the subcommittee, but it's less around any active planning, more around responsive to any direction.
Thank you.
Councillor Corrales.
Yeah, thank you for your report, Blair. I see the work programme. I just want to acknowledge that it is very comprehensive. You've got a huge task ahead of you. I've got two questions, and the first is potentially more for the record than I'm definitely not wanting to trip you up. But the point is, it's very problematic when we don't know specifically what it is that we are being asked to approve. And I note the direction or the recommendation refers to, things that have been approved by the previous, have been approved as per previous council's direction, and of course that wouldn't necessarily get the same support with the newly elected members. So my question is this: are we being asked to approve a business as usual approach to the work program, or are we being used to approve a series of headings with the opportunity for the newly elected council to have input into the strategy and setting the direction?
I would say it's the latter. There are a number of empowering resolutions that the previous councils have passed, and they remain live. We are working to those, but of course I will make sure that you are aware of matters, and they will come back here where a decision is required. So
thank you. My second question is, to what extent will governance and how and when will we be involved in the review of the economic development strategy?
Look, it's intended to come back through this committee, so I've yet to have a chance to really agree that with Councillor Chair Maria, but our initial thoughts are potentially some high-level discussions at the April meeting with a more comprehensive update in June.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McDonald, and please keep our questions direct. Thank you.
Yep. I appreciate the assurance that you've given us of the agility of the program. To my reading, the report seeks to looks for an endorsement to continue executing a work program that was approved by previous council. So I appreciate the need for continuity, but I'm hoping you can talk me through how what we have is there. It has been retested against current affordability pressures to, I guess, give a voice to making sure that we aren't just having the same thing that's been approved under new councillors.
I'd probably go back to my earlier comment. I'm eminently aware of all of the issues and the concerns that you have in terms of affordability, making sure our use of ratepayer funds and the work we do is not seen as wasteful. If I didn't think something was appropriate, I'd be the first to stop it or bring it back to your attention. So, Councillor, we are using every tool in our arsenal to recover costs from third parties, such as fast-track developments, where that's a process imposed upon us, and we're looking to push that back to the developers, so they shall pay for the work. If something is not required, I'll slow it down. We'll take an agile approach. We've got an item coming up on Percival Road, which we'll talk about that. So, look, I think you just need to take my assurance that I and the team, we are compared to many of other councils, I think we run a very lean operation with a massive work program, and I think it's a very focused work program on things that are appropriate, and if it's not required, we will slow it down or bring it back to your attention.
Thank you.
Councillor Mead.
Thank you. Just a very quick question. The fast track, is that at times causing us more headaches and assistance across them, and how do we manage that? Because there's some projects in there that look a long, long way away that are getting pushed on us.
Look, we're going to have some comprehensive workshops on the fast track councillors. The first one, I think, is early March, and then there's another one sometime in April. There are some big decisions coming up on fast track, but if I just summarise, we've taken an approach where we need to interact with these. We're not the decision maker, but we need to make sure that we get some good outcomes for our wider community.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor O'Leary.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for your report. Just clarifying, and I support the concerns raised by Councillor McDonald. We haven't simply had time to look at this work program as a governing board, but on page 11, Blair, you mentioned there was is it 6 or 8 matters. Are you saying that those in the work program are a priority? Fast track's the first one.
Yes, I've called those out as the major
Okay.
pillars. I mean, there are other things, but those are the really big ones that are occupying my group's focus and the organisation's focus.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Strange.
Thank you. 8.2, boundary changes. I know that in the past, discussions with other councils to bring land in would have required us effectively paying them, 10 years worth of rates and things like that. Is that still the case, or are we in a different environment now in terms of that land potentially coming in?
So the simpler answer is yes, there are agreements. We're going to talk about that more in the public excluded section, but there are agreements that speak to that. But we are taking a more moderated approach to boundary changes with all the other changes going on. So we'll cover how we're approaching that in PX.
Councillor Pike.
No, been answered now. Thank
Okay,
you.
Councillor Liu.
Thank you. My question is around boundary change as well. Given the possibility government reform to local government, how do we avoid wasting time and money on boundary works that could overtaken by these reforms?
So by only focusing on those that are absolutely most critical and others that would otherwise necessitate a boundary change possibly, or taking an approach that just slows that down and waits to see until we have clarity on the government process.
Thank you.
We'll talk about the detail in PX, but we are again wanting to make sure that we don't start a whole lot of work that may be overtaken.
Thank you.
Before we go to public excluded, is there any appetite for debate? Yes. Okay, so no problem. We'll hold debate till after public excluded, and so we'll go into a resolution to move it to public excluded. Do I have a mover? Councillor Corrales, seconder. Deputy Mayor Jeff, all in favour? Ka pai. Just to the public that are watching, we will be back online at 1 p.m. We're morning tea, sorry, morning tea for 10 minutes.